Are live. Good morning. Happy Friday. It's myself and Jonny Lazarus. We are well actually Johnny, let's start it off here. Why are we here?
We are here because I always see these like armchair GM pictures from PuckPedia on Twitter and social media, and I always wonder how people use this function of PuckPedia to create trades or signings or salary caps and whatnot. And I've never been like the armchair GM guy, Keith, as you know me for years,
Right,
but
you're an idiot.
it's fun though. Like I kind of enjoy seeing the proposals people come up with, and I just wanted to learn, so I asked you to show me, and I didn't know that you were going to broadcast to the world live, and that's why I hate you for so many reasons. But I think this is a good learning lesson for not only me, but a lot of hockey fans who want to learn how to use this Puck GM function.
Right, and I think a lot of the thing about you lately is that you can't read or you don't read. And in the
Yeah,
text messages that we had, there's a clear text message that says we should do this live for content, where you say yes, definitely. So this is the starting point. You can't even spell PuckPedia right. He spells it Puck Space Media, which is kind of close, but not
I
really.
didn't
And
realize
then
that.
yeah, and then later I was like, we should do this for content live. And Johnny said, yeah, definitely. And then when I tweeted about it about a half hour ago, he texted me and goes, wait, this is live and recorded. I hate you, which the hate has nothing to do with that because Johnny just hates me always. But it was very clear that this was going to be what it was. And
Yeah,
Johnny
jokes
has no one to
aside,
blame but
Keith.
himself.
Jokes aside, you do a great job, and PuckPedia is an awesome function, awesome tool, great for all NHL fans to have. And I thought this would be a pretty cool like learning lesson for me. So I'm excited to do this, and I appreciate you taking the time this morning.
I had nothing else better to do, which is an indictment of myself and my social life and just me as a person. So we're here to teach Johnny, but we're also here to show the ropes to people. And our great, wonderful producer Seth, who recently just accepted a part-time role at the NHL. So congrats, shout out to Seth. He's the freaking goat. He makes all this stuff look pretty for all of us because it's really hard to make me and Johnny look pretty, but he does a good job. I think he also works on your USHL show.
Yeah,
So
he does
Seth's
everything.
absolutely goated. He's the man. So Seth's going to show us the ropes. He's going to drive the bus for us. So Seth, if you want to start just screen sharing your screen, we're going to start just on the main PuckPedia page. We're going to show people how to get over and navigate this good stuff. So when you go to puckpedia.com, this is just the main page. Obviously, it has all the salary cap and transaction information, but the newest feature for PuckPedia over, I'd say, the last 6 to 12 months, maybe a little over a year, is our PuckGM feature. So, as Johnny mentioned, the armchair GM, something that we kind of did as kids, growing up playing the NHL like 06, 07 video games. I'm a little old, I guess, if I'm playing those, but you make trades and stuff in that. And so, when you click PuckGM, it kind of brings you
Keith,
what?
you were making trades at like 10 years old. You were doing
Oh yeah, dude.
you were
What?
doing
Dude?
like salary cap stuff at 10 years old. I always turn the salary cap off.
I don't know if I was doing salary cap per se, but I
Yeah.
was definitely, building my own rosters, doing like fantasy drafts and shit like that. Like when
Mhm.
I grew up as a kid, dude, I wasn't infatuated with the Devils players. I was infatuated with Lou Lamoriello and building the roster. And
Interesting.
that's kind of been, and that's now, I'm building my network, trying to meet as many AGMs, GMs as possible. And like, that's always what I've been interested in. I can never play for shit. So
That's good to know.
I was always about building the roster. So yeah, so we're gonna obviously probably do a Rangers base just because that's Johnny's fandom. But basically, when you go to PuckGM, the cool page here, like you start on the left hand side, you can see like rosters. There's mock drafts, draft lottery simulators, combinations. So that's a feature that's used a lot, kind of when the draft lottery is getting done in April. And then if you see below here where it has just like a bunch of, after you build all these rosters, like you can publish them and then people can then like them. You can turn comments off if you want, if you don't like getting abused. I think I did a Devils mock roster with a Quinn Hughes trade and people said, you're an idiot. You're so stupid. Shut up. And I was like, okay, I'm never turning comments off. But
Well, if anything,
yeah,
you should do the Kyrou mock trade today. No?
I know that's Johnny tweeted yesterday. He said Kyrie's basically a Devil already.
I mean, don't you think it makes sense? Like, aren't the Devils looking for another winger in their top six?
They need a
Like,
top six winger. Yeah. I've been trying to pump the Philip Forsberg train, who makes about the same as he does, but Philip Forsberg seems to be a guy who loves living in Nashville. So, and he has trade protection, so I don't know how likely that would be, but he would be a perfect fit next to Brett and Jack.
what's the age difference between those two? Also, like, how old is Philip Forsberg? I know he's not.
He's a little older than Kyrou for sure, but I don't know how much. Maybe 2 or 3 years.
He's not in his 30s yet, is he? Forsberg is. Oh, he's 31.
Close.
Wow. Yeah, he's 31.
Yeah.
I think Kyrou's 26.
Yeah, Kyrie's young. The Blues are a mess right now. They did win last night. They shut out the Sabres, but we'll see how that plays out. But
Kyrou's 27.
Yeah, So Seth, let's go to let's create this team here, and so basically you just click create team. Call it Johnny's, magnificent Rangers roster or whatever Johnny wants to title it.
That works.
And then after this, if you guys want to look, like we can post this like roster, and you guys can comment on it and call Johnny an idiot, tell him he can't read, all the fun stuff. And Johnny can even tweet out the link. I think you can share it after the fact too. So the cool thing about when you're building this is you have a few options. So you could either start in the off season. So if Johnny wants to kind of skip past this year, assuming all things stay the same, and you can start with next year's off season, or we can do in season if Johnny wants to do like mock Panarin trades and see what those returns would be. So what would you prefer?
Yeah, let's do in season.
All right, so let's do in season, 25, 26. So the cap ceiling's already going to be automatically set at 95.5 million. If you're doing the off season for next year or the seasons in the future, it'll have the projected cap hit, but nothing set in stone yet. So you can even update those if you have different opinions on what the cap ceiling might be. Description is optional. You don't need to really make a description unless you want to. Just give some more insight on what you're doing. We're not going to disable comments because we want people to roast Johnny's roster. We're gonna start with the Rangers base, so you can manage an existing team. You can also start from totally scratch, and you can kind of build your own rosters too if you wanted to kind of do some fun stuff. There's also, if you scroll down below a little bit, Seth, too, you can start with maybe not because it's in season, but when you're doing an off season roster, you can actually do some of the Olympic teams, which is pretty cool as the Olympics are kind of starting up. So you can no salary cap limits on that. Basically, if you wanted to do like your mock USA roster, and it'll have the cool depth charts that come out after the fact. So a lot of different cool features within here as well. So I think we're all set. So then you hit create on the bottom there. And then basically it runs through like what the Rangers' current structure is right now. So they currently are maxed out on their roster spots. They have a projected cap hit over the ceiling right now because they are an LTIR with Vincent Trocheck. So basically, once he kind of gets off LTIR, then the Rangers would have to make salary cap moves to make that fit under the current cap ceiling. You look at their projected deadline cap space too. They have a little under $3 million projected based on their current roster and how everything's accruing on a daily basis right now. And then you look at the draft capital too. The Rangers made some moves, obviously, with the Keandre Millers, like the big one where they got a couple draft picks from the Carolina Hurricanes. And we know last year they traded their first round pick, which ended up being Ben Kindle, who's making an impact on the Pittsburgh Penguins roster. So at the time, though, it made total sense because you didn't want to give an unprotected 2026 first round pick when Gavin McKenna and Keaton Verhoff are at the top of that draft. So if we scroll down a little bit here, and Seth, feel free to kind of chime in at any time as well and kind of go through some of this stuff. But basically, the Rangers already have their current rosters set up because we're in season. So there's no off-season moves to be made. If you were to do a 2026-27, then it would have all the UFAs and RFAs, and you would kind of go through decisions if you want to re-sign them or if you want to let them walk to free agency. So we already know what the Rangers are right now, and you have certain guys in the press box. You can call up, call down guys. So, Johnny, where do we want to take it? Seth, if you want to scroll down a little bit too, I assume we want to kind of go through some trade scenarios would be my guess, just based on the fact that we're doing in season.
Yeah, I mean, I figured you can do some Panarin mocks. That seems to make the most sense right now. That's the biggest topic of conversation around the Rangers. So if you want to lead the way in that direction and what it could look like, I think if you're doing a comparison, what I've thought about is like the Brock Nelson trade last year to Colorado. That's probably somewhere where you can like
top prospect and a
Panarin will get. Yeah. I know Panarin's probably just a little bit more highly touted than Brock Nelson was at the time, but I think what the Islanders got in return is probably what the Rangers would actually seek for. I don't know if that's what they'll get, but I think that's what they'd hope.
And before we kind of do this, maybe talk us through like why you are in favor of trading Panarin at this given time. With the Rangers, they're hovering a little bit above 500 right now. So there's obviously the season's still so young. They're not out of the playoff race by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. But like, why do you think they should trade Panarin? Maybe
I think Artemi Panarin is the perfect player that can get a team to the playoffs, but he's not a guy that's going to get you through the playoffs. And even at Artemi Panarin's best, we saw it in 2024. The guy had 120 points in the regular season, 49 goals. As good as he was, as good as the Rangers were, it wasn't good enough to get the ultimate prize. And I think at his age right now, just turned 34, will be 35 next year. It's just time to move on. The Rangers have a ton of players right now, especially up front, that are north of 30. They're a team that needs to get younger, that needs to get faster. And as good as Artemi Panarin is, you can get a lot back for him, and you can get younger. You can, start to build that next wave of players coming through the organization. And, the Rangers don't really have many assets that can get you a big return like Panarin can. So I just think it's time to move on from him. But with that said, like, I don't take away any credit from the player Artemi Panarin is. I think he'll be more valuable somewhere else. For what the Rangers have built right now, I don't think he's the guy to win them a Stanley Cup. So I don't want to sound like I'm disrespecting Artemi Panarin. I think the world of him as a player, but it just seems like where the Rangers are as an organization versus where Panarin is as a player right now, it just seems like it's best for both parties to move on.
Yeah, and Panarin only has this year left on his contract, so he's an expiring UFA. And now with the UFA class, he's basically the cream of the crop, just how quickly it's dwindled with everyone re-signing with their teams. And I think, too, to your point, like, he's a really good player, but maybe not the top guy on a team right now, where he probably is the top guy on the Rangers. And like you said, like, you don't think that he's at a point where he could be the guy to lead you in the playoffs at this point in his career, too. Like you said, he's 34 years old. He's not in his prime, anymore. He's kind of getting out of his prime, and they've had conversations, right? It sounds like that they offered him a similar deal to like what Kopitar was taken with the Kings, like a 3 or 4 by 7 or 8, like similar to Steven Stamkos too. And it sounds like he wasn't really all that interested in that. And things can change, as Elliot Friedman always says. One phone call could change everything. But at the current moment, if they don't have plans for him in their long-term future, he's a guy who can get you a lot in a trade.
Yeah, and I never blame the player either for wanting to get what they deserve. Panarin
if a team's going to pay you that, then like you take it.
Yeah, especially for what's going to be most likely his last contract in the NHL. And Panarin, again, like, probably the best free agent signing the Rangers have ever had. He's been,
Ever.
He's flirted with that Hart candidate every year that he's been here. He's been above a point a game every year he's been here. I know it's been a disappointing start to the season this year, but the guy has done everything he possibly could have done in the regular season. At least playoffs have been a little disappointing, but I don't think anyone can knock what Artemi Panarin's done in his time in New York.
No, he's an incredible player. And every stop that he's had, either the Chicago, Columbus, New York, like he's always just been a really good player. And so, all right, so let's talk through this armchair GM, PuckGM on PuckPedia. So what teams do you think, Johnny, would like value Panarin in terms of like where the team is? You're looking at a team that has some cap space to be able to absorb this contract, but you're also looking at a team that could really use a top line winger right now, and that the Rangers will be willing to trade. They probably, all things are considered, but they probably don't want to trade in their own division, I would assume.
Yeah.
So that kind of hampers out 8 teams there. So where do you see kind of Artemi Panarin fitting in? And also, like, it depends on what the Rangers are looking to get back in return.
So this one's interesting, Keith. And again, like, I haven't looked deeply into this because, again, I'm not the guy who tries to make trade proposals and whatnot. But again, this is what I want to start learning how to do. So that's why I came to you. A team that that really interests me that could use a playmaker right now, a team that's trying to win a cup, a team that just gave away a playmaker, is Toronto. I don't know what their cap space situation looks like. They probably don't have the room to fit Panarin right now, but I'm interested to see if they'd be a trade partner with the Rangers. Just because, again, like, their top 6 right now is missing, that number 1 playmaker that can get Austin Matthews the puck, that can help their power play. They've had Bobby McMahon in the top 6. They've had Matthias Michelli in the top 6.
Easton Cowan,
who now got sent down to the AHL. I think they've been trying to put middle 6 guys in that role, and none of those guys have seemingly fit. So Panarin could be the perfect guy that they can maybe have for the next 3 years as they look to win a Stanley Cup. This is a team that wants to win now, and Panarin's going to go to a team that probably wants to win now.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think what the issue is going to be with Toronto, like you mentioned, is that cap space, right? Yeah. They really don't have any cap space. They're struggling to even, like, make the day-to-day kind of cap picture work. And a lot of that was due to them when they got rid of Marner and his $11 million cap hit. They supplanted that by getting guys like Matthias Michelli, who's over $3 million a year. Dakota Joshua, also over $3 million a year. Waugh in that trade was also, I think, over $3 million a year. So they supplanted Marner from his $11 million by filling in a lot of like middle 6 kind of players at, not nothing cap hits either. Like, a few $1 million here, a few $1 million there adds up.
We could try Anaheim. I know they have the cap space and a lot of signs.
You mean New York West?
Yeah, but also a lot of signs point there. I mean, just because the Ducks right now are top of the Pacific Division. You know, they're playing well. Their top 6 though, like, doesn't really have many holes. That's why it's like, do you need a guy like Panarin? But if you have the money, why not spend it on him? And you could just make your roster even deeper by pushing guys that are playing well down to a third line. And that's how championship teams are built, right? It's not plugging a guy where they should be. It's having better guys playing in a role that like they can become and having that be more valuable, like Brad Marchand on the third line. So I think Anaheim makes also, you know, Coach Quenneville. Obviously, Panarin entered the league playing for Q in Chicago, and that probably makes sense as well. But Anaheim is just a team right now that I think Pat Verbeek has to reward what his team has done, and bringing in a guy like Panarin might just be that.
Yeah, so Seth, let's cook up a mock trade here with the Anaheim Ducks, because to Johnny's point too, I think the Ducks are a team that make a lot of sense because one, you mentioned the Quenneville connection. Two, a lot of his former Ranger teammates are playing over there. You got Kreider, Trouba, Frankie V, Strome. So familiarity there. And then three, the Ducks are a team who are playing lights out right now, and they're exceeding all expectations. And to your point, you want to reward a young team with a player like that would only get the locker room fired up. And I think he brings a lot of intangibles. And no offense to like someone like a Chris Kreider who's having a fucking fire start to the season, but maybe like having Artemi Panarin in the top 6 is a little bit better than having Chris Kreider in the top 6 there.
Yeah, I fully agree.
All right, Seth. So let's try and make this work with a cap kind of perspective. So currently, right now, with the move of just getting Artemi Panarin, I think the Ducks actually would be able to fit that in, right? So their projected cap space would be $1.8 million with Panarin on their roster if they don't kind of subtract anything. I guess from the Rangers' point of view, like you mentioned, you said a first-round draft pick seems like a definite starting point, as well as a prospect. The Rangers, I think the Ducks have a little extra like right-hand defenseman. I think they have a few like guys who are upcoming RFAs who might not be in the long-term plans in Anaheim. And so I think that's kind of maybe where we start. So Seth, if we want to look at some of their guys on the signed list here, and you can also look at the reserve list, so guys in the minors as well. I want to go down, maybe go all the way to the bottom here, Seth. Yeah, I think like a Zellweger or a Minchikov would be kind of where the Ducks would maybe be able to deal from for Artemi Panarin. Any thoughts there, Johnny, in terms of those kind of players who might be a better fit on the Rangers roster?
You know what? I think adding defensemen, especially on the left side right now, is probably a hole that the Rangers could still fill. That third pair of Robertson, Vakanainen, the Rangers have rotated guys, and Susi. If they can get a little younger and maybe a little faster on the blue line, that'll help. I don't know if that's like the biggest need right now. I still think their forward group is what needs to be built out, especially because they played so well defensively. So that's a little bit confusing as far as the angle the Rangers would want to take in a return. I think they need some more forward prospects that could eventually play in their top 6. Like, I think that's kind of what the Rangers are going to look for, because right now, their top 6 is pretty much filled with guys who are 30 plus, and Alexis Lafreniere, who's been a little bit disappointing. So I think the angle would be forwards, but I don't know if it would hurt to get young defensemen as well.
Yeah, and I think Seth, there are so the issue I would say with the Ducks, or not necessarily an issue, is like I don't know necessarily which forward prospects they would be willing to deal. Like you look at some of the guys that they've like Cutter Gauthier is obviously off limits. Leo Carlson's obviously off limits. You'd think Beckett Seneca obviously off limits as well. So then you kind of dive down a little bit deeper into their prospect pool. They have they have this Nathan Gauthier player who's he's a 6'3" center who could possibly kind of be a guy that the Rangers could use. He's got some physicality to him. I think he's playing in the Q right now. He's 22, so he's a little bit of an overager, but the Ducks have the issue with matching on trade partners is the Ducks seem to have like a lot of defensemen. So like, and I know you said like the Rangers kind of want maybe, but like, do you think 2 prospects plus a first round pick is too pricey of a trade for Panarin?
2 prospects and a first round pick?
From the Ducks advantage.
I think the Ducks would do that. Like, do they need to rely on prospects right now when they have a lot of young guys in their lineup that are playing well? Like, probably not, right? There might not be a lot of room for prospects. So I could see them giving up 2 prospects for sure.
All right, let's do Gauthier, and then let's do one of Zellweger or Minchikov. Seth, if you can see, Johnny, you said left defense is kind of the Rangers' need more than right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. Seth, look at if either of those guys are left. I'm not 100% positive. I should probably know that, but as Johnny always says, I'm an idiot too. So
No, you're smart.
so let's put one of Zellweger or Minchikov in the deal with Gaucher and the first round pick for Panarin, and then let's hit submit trade on that. All right, and we got our trade now completed with Anaheim. So then you go back to the depth chart. To me, I think when if that trade does happen, to me, that's a no-brainer for Gabe to kind of come up, right? Like that would be who I would assume the Rangers would call up in a situation if they were to get Panarin out of their top 6.
Say it again. Sorry.
As for like, who do you think the Rangers would then call up if they were to trade Panarin? Like, would it be Gabe?
I would think so. I think Alexi Lafreniere would go back to his normal left side, and then Gabe Perreault, who plays right wing, mostly would bump up to that top line, perhaps, or they'd shuffle it around like that.
All right, cool. So let's call up Gabe there and put him in the lineup.
Yeah, there you go. You can swap Alexi Lafreniere to the second line.
Also, I did want to point out too, we'd be in that deal. We probably could have sweetened the pot a little bit by doing some salary retention, because the Ducks maybe they want to make a secondary move as well if they wanted to get Panarin and maybe a depth defender, just because that seems like a lot of teams that's what they're interested in at that time of year. So just injuries happen and the Ducks have a lot of young defensemen on their roster, and so we could have retained on that to add maybe the second prospect would have sweetened the deal if we got some retention on that deal, and you're able to retain up to 50%. I would imagine in a deal like that, it would probably be closer to like 25% on the retention number, just based off of historicals. But that is a feature too that you're able to do right on PuckGM. And now, so like let's put Zellweger in the lineup as well, and maybe call Robertson back down to the minors, and bring Trocheck back from LTIR. No, so yeah, there we go. So yeah, so then we have a left side now of Gavrikov, Soucy, and Zellweger, with Adam Fox, Borgen, and Snyder on the right side. If you want to put Trocheck on as a center, move Mika to the wing there. Yeah, there we go, and then put Gabe on that second. So now here's what the Rangers are kind of looking at with Rempe still injured. I know, like, and maybe Edstrom's now going to be the healthy scratch. It looks like tonight, with Shamir making his is it his NHL debut or just his season debut?
Khmelash.
Say that again.
Khmelash.
Love it.
Yeah,
he's a big boy, right?
A little confusing. Yeah, he played at Providence. Actually called a couple of his games in Hockey East, but haven't gotten to watch much of him in the AHL. But a guy who actually has a lot of skill for a big guy, throws the body around and plays in that front. He's honestly an underrated prospect that the Rangers have had for quite a bit. So if he does make his debut tonight, I think it'll go well for him. We'll see. I mean, hopefully it does.
Yeah, I know. Rangers are in Detroit tonight, I believe. So we'll see how that all plays out. But yeah, so now we have traded Artemi Panarin. If the Rangers were to trade Panarin, Johnny, do you think that would be the only move they make, or do you think that kind of opens the doors a little bit to maybe move some expiring deals as well?
It's a tough question, just also because if the Rangers are in a wild card spot or flirting with the playoffs, like I don't know if they're going to move on from him. I think they're going to try to get, like, this is a team that wants to make the playoffs and see what they can do once they get there. So I don't think this Panarin trade is an automatic. So I don't think it's happening soon. I think they're going to wait it out and see how it plays out. But also Panarin, again, is in full control, right? With his no move. It's not like he can just say like yes to any trade that's proposed. So I think it's going to take time, and I don't know if they can make that many moves if it gets close to the deadline, just with where the team is. It all depends on if they drop off, then that's probably a different story, and they can make, 2 or 3 moves. But the Rangers right now are still competitive and still a team that looks like they can make the playoffs. Like, I don't think it's
100%.
People think,
No, their underlying numbers are actually really strong. Like their expected goals their expected goal percentage at 5-on-5 is like top 5 in the NHL. They're just not putting away those chances, unfortunately. So it seems like more of a finishing thing, and they got goalied a couple times too. So I don't think the process is necessarily the issue. And now the Rangers will now have 3 first-round picks. So the Jim Dolan, Chris Drury mantra is like, we don't rebuild here, we kind of retool. So maybe they want to use one of those first-round picks to not necessarily draft a prospect, but use use that to acquire young talent. You maybe want to, should we kind of try and maybe find a younger player? I know like a guy like Marco Rossi seems to always be in trade conversations with the Minnesota Wild, but maybe there's players. I know Chinikov in Columbus, as well as a guy that seems to get healthy scratched a bunch, but he's a former first round pick who has pretty strong underlying numbers and is a pretty efficient player. So maybe we kind of use one of those draft picks to kind of get a current roster player that can make an impact as soon as they deal Panarin away.
Mm-hmm. This team right now is just that's the biggest mystery, is like, what is the direction, right? Because you've done this retool on the fly, and you want to have a team that can win a Stanley Cup when you have Fox locked up, you have Shesterkin locked up, and again, like, their centers are now locked up for long term too. You don't just want to waste these years. So yeah, it's a confusing time for Rangers fans for sure.
Let's look at the current roster, Seth, just to see here. Is there any other moves that you'd want to make, Johnny, for this current roster, or is this like after the Panarin trade? Do you view this as like that? Because the Rangers now, if you look, they have $7.4 million in cap space once they unload Panarin at his full salary. They moved Trocheck back up from LTIR, so he obviously eats into some of that as his $5.625 million cap hit. But the Rangers have space. The Rangers have good prospects too. I know Brendan Othman's trade value, unfortunately, right now is probably at an all-time low, but he's a guy who is the former first-round pick who a couple years ago was viewed as an untouchable in some conversations they might have had around the Jake Gensel trade a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think he's like an obvious one that you move on from. But again, like, if you're just getting a fringe NHLer in return, I don't know if it's like necessarily worth it right now. I could see Othman still like turning it around in the AHL and maybe finding his confidence back and possibly making it out of camp next year. He's a confusing one, right? Because I can go deep in this just because Othman came here as a goal scorer and he never found a way to score in the NHL, but that doesn't mean he won't ever find it. Like, he was getting chances. Like, he got some looks. He wasn't really playing top line minutes. He got one look last year, I think, with Trocheck and Lafreniere maybe on the top line. I remember in Anaheim, he was playing on the top line in that game. But usually when you see a guy get one, they at least like get that monkey off their back. They're a little more relaxed. But the longer it takes to get your first, the more stressed out you get, the more you lose your confidence. And I think with Othman,
Grip the stick too tight.
Yeah, with Othman, just not, again, it's also like, I always love making this comparison to, and I know it's hard to compare situations in sports to like 9-to-5 real life corporate jobs, but it's almost like starting a new job and then not being able to make a sale for the first 6-7 months. And you don't feel like you're contributing anything. You don't feel like you're a part of that team or company or whatever you want to call it. And for Othman, since he didn't technically contribute in the goal column, it's hard to really feel like you fit in or belong. And I think if he found one bounce or just one lucky strike, that changes the whole course of what we've seen from him. So I do think Brendan Othman will be an NHL player somewhere if it's not here, but his value right now, it just doesn't seem like it's worth it to move on if you're not even going to get anything that you can throw in your roster.
Yeah, no, those are all great points. I think maybe a player we might want to look to move and talk to me through this one is a guy like Braden Schneider. He's an upcoming RFA. He's on a $2.2 million cap hit. If he's a guy that isn't in the Rangers' long-term plans, it feels like now might be the time. And as Seth noted here, you have Scott Morrow in the minors, who they traded in the Keandre Miller deal. They traded for him. And he's a guy who has always seems to be a guy that a lot of people like in terms of his underlying numbers. He'd be able to run power play 2 with Fox still on power play 1. And he's a guy that maybe the Rangers look to kind of bring into the fold on their right side of the defense for next season.
Yeah, and again,
if they trade Schneider,
even without Panarin, he could even be on the top unit with Fox. Like, let's say if the Rangers move on from Panarin and need a right-handed shot to fill that void, like, Morrow could be that guy as well. But with Scott Morrow too, I think Braden Schneider is just a little bit more responsible defensively. Like, that's a big thing that Morrow still has to learn in the pros, is just being consistent in his own zone. Obviously, the offensive talent's there, and this is a guy too, like, UMass guy. Watched him play sophomore year, junior year. So I got 2 full seasons of Scott Morrow as far as like being a broadcaster goes. And the biggest thing for him from sophomore to junior year was that maturity and was knowing when to take the risk offensively when it's not going to cost you in the defensive zone. That was a big thing that Coach Carvel needed to teach him, I think, in his time here. But the guy can shoot the puck. He skates like Jack Eichel, where he gets up the ice so quick, but it looks effortless. And I think he has a very promising future. So moving on from Schneider, it just seems like it makes the most sense, especially since Borgen's now locked up. But Braden Schneider, I think, is another one of those guys who, again, still a very young player. It seems like he's been around much longer than he actually has been. But I think the Rangers have looked for him to take a bigger leap where he hasn't really been able to do that yet. And I think there is more offensive upside to Schneider's game that we haven't really seen. Like the kid can hammer the puck, but his lateral movement is what kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I guess he just lacks lateral movement. Like he doesn't get the puck on the wall and then walk to the middle all that much and like juke out a winger that's pressuring him.
Yeah.
But when his shot gets through, it's dangerous. I'd like to see Schneider be a little bit more offensively minded because it is there, but it hasn't fully developed.
Yeah, so let's go through our move Schneider as well, so we can get to. And the reason I think that Schneider trade makes sense is because at that time of year, a couple months in, there's going to be injuries to the team's back ends, and contenders are always trying to add defensemen, especially right shot defensemen. That's one of the most valuable positions in hockey, aside from a center and maybe a goaltender. So I think like he will actually have a good amount of trade value at that time, and if he's not in your long term plans and you already have two defensemen on the right side locked up for long term, and you have a prospect like Morrow in the pipeline, it seems to make sense, unfortunately for Schneider, that he would get squeezed out a little bit. But maybe at the same time, he wants a fresh start and he wants to go to a team that's like more solidified contender right now than the Rangers currently are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Schneider again is like a valuable piece to a team that's trying to build a blue line for a cup right now.
Yeah,
And again,
so let's.
sorry, go.
No, go. I was gonna say, like, what team
Yeah.
do you think that would be?
Tampa Bay. I think Tampa's right side right now, their blue line's pretty weak. If they can bring in a guy like Schneider, you know, who's Tampa's. Let me just look up their roster quick to see who their right shot defensemen are. But I know that's been a hole for them. Like Lilleberg, you know, he's I think he's a left-handed shot playing the right side. Darren Radish, you know, another guy on their blue line. You know, I think that's a hole that Schneider can fill. Physical defenseman, like I said, can shoot the puck, but yeah, Tampa's blue line probably holds them back a little bit. Even Dallas too, right? Like who's Dallas's right side blue line right now that I'm thinking of? Who's that third pair?
Is it Nils Lundqvist?
No, it's Petrovic.
Petrovic.
Yeah, I don't think Nils Lundqvist has really played much, but Alex Petrovic, obviously an older guy as well. Schneider can come in, be, you know, another energy bolt, younger guy, can be there for a long time. So that's a guy maybe that Dallas could be interested in.
Yeah, so let's go through. You want to do Dallas?
Up to you. You're the one in charge.
Yeah, we could do Dallas because Dallas is a team right now. So, like, if you look at their projected cap space, after moving, getting Schneider, they're actually in the negative right now. They're minus 2.2. So they need to move cap to make this deal work. So it would have to be a roster player that would have to move in addition to any other thing. So let's go through their roster real quick, Seth, and see. Like for Dallas too, it's tough because a lot of the players on their roster that would be in trade talks are guys that are going to help them win right now, and so and they could always make moves to with another team to kind of clear some cap space. But to me, I don't know if I have anyone who I'm thinking, and you can always retain. So let's do some cap retention here to kind of sweeten the pot. And then how much did we retain there, Seth? We did 1.1. So we did the full 50% retention on Braden Schneider. So Dallas now would only need how much would they need to clear? About $1.9 million in projected cap space with that move. But in the current cap space, they're only 284K. So we actually don't really need to clear too much cap space. So let's just throw in just looking at Seth scrolling here. I feel like from a draft compensation, I feel like Schneider could net like a mid, like second or third round pick, right? Like that would not be a guy I think that would get a first round pick, but
No,
and
no, I
Dallas
don't
doesn't
think so.
have and Dallas doesn't have too much draft capital. So let's use that Seattle third as part of the deal. And then let's go to their signed. You know, does someone on their depth like a Colin Blackwell make sense? Like, is it like a,
He's already been
I
here.
know. I know. He's already been on the Rangers. Maverick Bork would make sense, but I don't think he's a guy that they would move on from. But at the same time, if they are trying to lock down Jason Robertson long term, who's on the last year of his deal, like, and Maverick Bork's kind of an upcoming RFA, like maybe he's a guy that would, one, intrigue the Rangers, but two, he's a guy who doesn't have too much production right now. He's got 3 points in 14 games. He was a former either late first or mid second round pick for the Dallas Stars, but like they have Wyatt Johnson locked up long term now. And they have some guys, there's some guys coming up on UFA. Tyler Sagan's contract is up at the end of the year, but let's throw Maverick Bork in there and that Seattle third for Braden Snyder. And then let's submit that trade. And then the Rangers now have some better, like, younger players to build around. And they have, Maverick Bork could be a guy. And like, look at Noah Laba this year, right? Like, he's a guy who's kind of come in and just taken that roster spot. And so, like, maybe Maverick Bork like makes sense in that. Like, I don't know if he makes sense in that fourth line role, but he's a guy that we could, maybe he's a winger in the NHL. Maybe he's not really a true center. And so you put him around on that third line with Laba and Sherry, and maybe a guy like Othman ends up making the roster, next season. And that's a third line, young players who are kind of maybe Brett Berard comes up from Hartford and he's on the roster next season too. And then you still got Rempe who's injured. So I think does that trade make sense from the Rangers perspective, Johnny?
Well, Berard's a guy who should have made the team out of camp this year, but again, like, they need youth and they need speed. Bork brings that. But the history with the Rangers has been the older players blocking out the younger players. And again, like, it's not a given that Maverick Bork would just come here and get opportunity.
Right.
So while it does make sense from a logistical standpoint, I don't know if he'd be utilized in the way that we would think he would.
Yeah, you never know what the coaches are thinking and the staff. But like, that's why we're on this computer screen doing this on PuckGM and PuckPedia, and we're not getting paid millions of dollars to handle these NHL rosters. And so I think that all looks good, Seth. I think from my point of view, I think we kind of could then go ahead and publish this roster. So just to recap kind of the moves we made here, as you can look, Seth, go up a little bit. So we made 2 trades right now. So we basically traded Artemi Panarin to the Ducks with no salary retention, and we got the Rangers one prospect in Gauthier, but also Zellweger, who's a current Ducks defenseman, but he is an upcoming RFA, and he's a guy the Ducks will need to sign. And they have a ton of guys they need to sign, so maybe he gets squeezed out because of that reason. And we also netted a first-round pick for the Rangers, and then we traded Braden Snyder to the Dallas Stars to help them boost their right-hand side of defense. And we got Maverick Bork, who's at $950K this year, and a third-round pick who's I think that was from the Mason Marchment deal that they got from Seattle. And so that's kind of the recap here. And then now if you look at the Ranger salary cap picture, if you scroll towards the top, I want to see what the number they're at now. Yeah, so they're only at $88.2 million, with the salary cap going up next season to potentially over $104 million and a lot of draft capital. Now the Rangers have 3 first-round picks next season. So that positions themselves to make some damage in the offseason, either via trade or free agency, probably most likely trade just due to the available market. But I think that positions themselves. Maybe they get a guy like Alex Tuck or an Adrian Kempe. I know Kempe's probably going to sign back in LA, but he's a guy who's probably the best UFA upcoming remaining available right now. And so I think this positions the Rangers nicely. Unfortunately, it would mean that they probably, if they make the playoffs with that roster, it would probably be tough to make a run just based off of trading your best player right now. But it positions themselves good for the future, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Even a guy like, who knows, maybe they go out and sign a Nick Schmaltz if he makes it to free agency. He's a guy who's 29 years old. He could play the right wing if needed. Again, I guess that doesn't really make them so much younger because 29 in the NHL isn't like, necessarily in a guy's prime. It's kind of like on the way out of the prime, depending on who we're talking about. But Schmaltz has also been like, that 60-point, 70-point guy. He's not really the guy who's going to come in and replace Panarin, and you probably can't replace Panarin. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But again, like, just toying around with these things is so cool, and just to see what you can come up with, what we can come up with, like in no way, shape, or form coming into this, Keith, that I think I would think about a Braden Schneider trade to Dallas, right? But that's kind of why this tool and this function of PuckPedia is great. And when I have a free hour or 2 hours, I'm just going to plug and play with it.
Exactly. And you go over to Seth too. Like you can click on cap projections, special teams. Like you can basically, build the whole depth chart the way you want it. You can put guys on the power play. We don't have to necessarily do that right now, but yeah, you can just like build up your power play 1 and your power play 2 and your penalty kills. You can create players. So like if there's a prospect that isn't necessarily in this database, you're able to just like kind of add him and put his name down and cap hit. Although PuckPedia does have pretty much every single player on both the signed list and the reserve list, all draft picks and guys like that. So if you want to add yourself to a roster for shits and giggles, like you can do that as well. But yeah, a lot of cool features. Yeah, we could add Jonny Lazarus, Johnny McKenna, Johnny McKenna Lazarus. But yeah, that's all kind of the time we have for this stuff. We'll publish Johnny's roster and then that'll create a link and then we can kind of share it. Johnny can post it on Twitter if he wants to, and people can roast him and say we're total idiots for assuming that Dallas would trade Maverick Bork or that the Ducks would give us 2 prospects and a first round pick with no retention. But that's the fun of this, right? We love when people call us idiots. That's kind of my bread and butter. And Johnny's as well. But yeah, any last words? Thanks for the time, Johnny. I hope this like helped you too.
Yeah, no, it does. I'll go back and rewatch it too before I can like start toying with it because I need to remember every little step of the way that we did. Seth does a great job behind the scenes, obviously, but Keith, I appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, and you can text me and I won't make content out of it if you have actual questions. And also, like, if you have any questions too, like people reply to the tweet of this live stream and I'll kind of go in through and try and help and navigate anything I can. Hart is also good at really responding to people, and Seth too. Seth probably knows PuckGM better than me. So honestly, he's probably your go-to guy. But thanks for the time and hope this was enjoyable to people.